Okay, great. I just want to start with talking a little bit about the agenda. So, obviously, we're going to introduce the topic, which is project management and cybersecurity. I am sure that as a project manager, you are beginning to or have started to take more steps towards making sure your project and your personnel are cyber safe, which is all very important. And we'll be talking about tools, techniques, things that are out there, challenges that are out there, and things that are just good practices. We'll be talking about how project management and how it all connects together along with cybersecurity. Having said all that, the topics that we'll be going through are on the agenda, and I'm going to kind of jump right into the first topic because I feel that that's the best way to get into this because it is an interesting topic. Obviously, you can see the points on the screen, but I kind of want to talk about some things that as a project manager, I've been a project manager for over 30 years, that I kind of take into account. The first thing with cybersecurity and staying cyber safe is project managers might think it's not necessarily so important because the project might not be that long. The reality is, you are a target for many bad actors that are out there, and particularly with the increase of remote workers, now you're having to protect not only a network within the organization or within a confined space of the office, you are also having to protect data that is all over the place. And so you may think that, well, our servers are protected and locked up, and we have regular maintenance done on those. But it's actually, when you think about it, any potential remote worker is an access node to your network. So making sure that those are all safe is very important. Some other things as a project manager, you might think that, well, all data, might not be valuable to the outside world of the bad actors. You might be working on a project that seems something very mundane, and not even, you may think, wow, why would anyone really want to be poking around? And if they did poke around, they probably wouldn't find anything of value. Now, this is not the right mentality to have because then you'll be exposing yourself and leaving yourself a little open. Just think about this, okay? You may say, well, my data is not that important. No one's interested in this project. Let's say it's a very boring project about, building, let's say something like a pipeline or just a building a tank water tower. Not so exciting. However, think about all the individuals involved have been hired through HR, and all that HR data is going to be available somewhere. And if stolen, just think of the treasure trove for individuals for identity theft that could become. And if you think, well, that might not happen, well, the government has been hacked, already, where their HR records were particularly stolen by bad actors, and not only were things like social security numbers exposed, but payroll data and things like that. And you may go, well, wow, that's terrible, and now there's identity theft. But on top of that, they had hacked into government personnel records in order to find out individuals who are on the payroll internationally. And now suddenly bad actors can say, wow, it's interesting that this John Smith guy who's living in a foreign country is on the payroll for the government from the government. That's very interesting to think. Why would he be doing that if he's supposed to be working here on a project? So you might not realize the data that you have is interesting, but just off the top, that you're going to be housing potentially social security numbers for individuals, payroll data, any other private information when it comes to their address, their home, any other identifying information. So all information can be used by bad actors. So just because you're on a mundane project and it's going to be short, you may think, it's not really that important. Same thing goes for 1099 information. You're going to suddenly, expose people's 1099 information. You may say, oh, well, I'm not necessarily working with people directly. I have all 1099 employees, but that data also goes out there and then kind of calls into question, well, why are these people on the payroll? What are they doing? It has the information like that. So keep that in mind. And again, as we are on projects, remote working, all this data becomes very interesting to individuals that are outside of the project. So kind of moving on, something to think about. Cybercrime, it's out there. As you can see by the stat here, there are, 3 cyber attacks every minute that are happening just on U.S. companies. Okay, means, well, if you think it might not be you, well, maybe if it's happening every minute, well, then maybe it could be you. And also, if you look at the losses that are estimated for cyber attacks against organizations, it's $6 trillion. Huge number, and that's the all the losses that go into cybercrime, between the hacking the data, disrupting work. I don't know if people remember, not too long ago, all of Maersk, a very large shipping line, was disrupted, and had huge issues for supply chain and cargo movement, and was very problematic. Eventually, they did recover, but it took a long time, and it was not a very easy return to work, so to speak. Same thing has happened for other companies out there. I'm sure people remember, not too many years ago, Sony got hacked, and individuals were they had gotten into movies and disclosed data, such as payment for people, salaries and things like that, private information that got out there from Sony. So big companies are being hit. Also, I want people to think, well, I'm too small to be of notice, but I'm going, well, you may think you're small, but again, data could be interesting. But even the big companies that work really hard to try to stay safe, again, Microsoft has indicated that they have had, people that have accessed into their network and systems. And if you think with all the money and security and potential of a company like Microsoft, that they could get hacked, there's no way that you can tell me as an individual, or as a small company or as a mid-sized company or even as a large company, you're going to be safe. And remember that these cyber criminals they're savvy, and they know to work the odds. They don't just try one place. And I know Hollywood movies make it sound like, oh well, this determined hacker is going to get into this one place, and yes, that happens. But for the most part, cyber hackers are really just opportunistic, and they work the odds. They go and start poking around in people's systems, and they go, wow, this one's not protected. This one I can get into, and this one I can do something. And then they try to figure out what they can do with that, because just because they can get in, they still got to find their way to where that data is. They don't have necessarily a roadmap of your data, of course, unless they are successful with a phishing attack, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with, is where they send fake information to steal your credentials. And then in that case, then that's like a gold mine for these hackers and criminals, because they can then get in, and then it's like they're just like an employee. They can see the data, and it's not this hunt and peck kind of situation. And remember that they're just working the odds, and they're just like other criminals. And I'll give you an example of a scam that's out there. For example, and it's just the odds. You'll go and say, okay, well, let's say you get a call from someone, and they say, all right, we are going to, that person's going to tell you the winner of the next 3 horse races over the next 3 days. And then they say, well, if you want to know who the winner on the fourth is, well, you're going to have to pay me this large sum of money. So, they call you up, and the first horse wins, the second horse wins, the third horse wins. And now they're coming after you and say, hey, well, I'll give you the name of the winner, and give me a big chunk of money, because look, you're going to put money on that horse. You're going to make so much money. This is a sure thing. I have this system that I've been perfecting for years. And it sounds so convincing, and that's what the criminals are doing. They're working the odds. And let me explain that. They say, well, what's really their system? Well, their system isn't necessarily that they know what horse is going to win. What they've done is they've been calling so many people they know. And if you do the matrix of the individuals, if they called 1,000 people for the first race, well, 10%, 10% will be right, assuming 10 horses in the race. So then there's 100 people that call back and say, look, I'm going to tell you the winner of the second. And then from that, 10 people are now, then on the hook for this. And so, they think that, well, they're going to get that big payoff on that fourth race. But really what's happened is they've just worked the odds, and they've called so many people that, now they have 10 people that are primed to believe, and maybe not all of them will go and say, "Oh, I won't give you $1,000 or whatever they're asking." But hey, maybe if you do, and suddenly this person who has now just worked the odds, has found a way to scam people. And the same thing with cyber criminals. They're going to work the odd. They're going to go for the easy. They're going to try things that they can get to, rather than necessarily try to hack into the government or Microsoft. That might be out of their realm and might not get them money quickly. And that's why you hear about they hold company data for ransom, because that works, because company data is often very difficult. And then to that regard, I want to give a personal example, because I was involved with a company that was hit. The data, they hacked their way in, and they had been in for weeks, and so all the backups were infected as well. And so then they scrambled all the data, and they went to the company and said, "Oh, well, unless you pay us this exorbitant sum of money, we're not going to give you the key to open it." So the authorities get involved. It's quite crazy. In the end, the company decided, what, they would rather reconstruct their data, from the last good point, and then figure it out. So it was a huge effort to get that data, reconstitute it, and redevelop it, and put it all back together. But in the end, they didn't pay. The hackers went away without anything. But of course, they did make a mess of things for that company for if I recall, it was a couple months. For 1 month, the first month was just trying to get it and piece it back together from other people's memories or data or local information of people that had put other data out, even reaching out to some customers to try to put it all together. So it can happen, and it can be quite the mess, and it can be quite costly just from a disruption standpoint. So kind of let me go on to cybersecurity and things we can talk about, and things that we can do, because as a project manager, you go, well, are we safe? And the reality is, you're probably not as safe as you think you are. Again, you probably should be doing more. But remember, if companies like Microsoft are going to get hacked, you got to do what you feel is the best for your organization, and you have to kind of weigh the cost benefits. Kind of like things like, I'll throw some things out that are common, like virus protection. Everyone, should be using virus protection. Everyone should be updating all their computers and keeping, with the most up-to-date security patches. Another thing to do with CyberSafe is for the organization to kind of talk about the situation, talk about cybersecurity. Um, make it a meeting topic within your project management meetings, just to make sure people are doing it, make sure people are aware. You know, I think that sometimes people feel that it couldn't happen to them, or that they aren't that interesting. But it really is, raise the concern, talk about it, ask people if they're keeping their computers and their systems up to date, ask them if they're using virus protection, ask them, if they are doing the right things. Raise that awareness within the organization as a project manager. It's better to be proactive and try to keep things safe, than to try to figure out what to do in the event of an incident. Like I said, make it a meeting topic, review it with your staff, review it with the team, review it with your stakeholders. On top of that, make sure people are aware, because remember, it's going to impact all the people that are involved with the project. And so making sure that everyone is aware and you're doing the right thing is going to send the right message to your customer, but also the right message to all the people involved. And it's a challenge at times, but I think it's well worth it. And that moves us into the reason why sometimes we get lulled into security. We as human beings just love and trust our devices. Okay, people trust their devices. They trust their computer. They trust, we probably trust our home computer more than our work computer, because in work we're thinking about work, but it could happen at home too. And also, we just as humans trust the familiar. And I kind of want to mention this to some people, because I've seen this with project managers, and project managers that I have seen uh, have a tendency not wanting to upgrade their device, because, and here's the quote that I've heard before: "It is set up the way I want it." And so the fear is if I go and upgrade and get something maybe that might be a little bit more secure, I'm going to have to go through this long process of fixing all these things to make it work. And so, it's just something that we have to think about. And if we as project managers aren't taking that step and upgrading and moving to the latest security and doing this, how can we expect our team to do the same? So, I'm not saying that you should rush out and upgrade your device, but I'm just saying think about it and make sure that you are making sure that everything that can be done is being done, and make sure that safety protocols throughout the organization are for all devices. And I put the list there: desktops, laptops, tablets, phones. Make sure everybody's doing the same thing when it comes to safety protocols, meaning, you should be having virus protection. Maybe you should be having remote monitoring of your systems. You should be having your servers and all your computers upgraded and cleared. To give you an example, there was one case of a cyber attack, and the organization had managed to push out the patch that a known vulnerability to all their devices but one. And guess how the bad actors got in? Yep, that's right. They found that one node, that one computer that was not upgraded, and used the known vulnerability and known tools to hack into the system. Now, the other thing to remember about these known vulnerabilities and patches is that the patch is good, but is not great. The patch, if deployed across the board and every computer is protected, then that vulnerability is no longer. However, if they do get in, it doesn't matter. Patch devices, non-patch devices, once they're in, it doesn't matter. So, you've got to have like almost this shield 100% to make it work. Because if you just upgrade half of them, you're just telling, like, remember I was talking about how these guys are working the odds and looking for the opportunity. Well, if you patch half of them, they're going to find the ones that aren't patched and go through that door because you've left it open. So keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind. I know we trust our devices, and I know we spend a lot of time trying not to lose our devices. But as a project manager, making sure that you can remote wipe your devices, because let's say you lose your phone or you lose a laptop, you lose a tablet somewhere, you would think that you'd want to be able to wipe those immediately and make sure that, again, it gets all cleaned up and it's no longer the data is out there, not only just from just your personal information, credit cards, but just any of the data regarding the organization, because you never know whose hands that might land in. There's just too many opportunities for someone to take advantage of something. I was reading somewhere where someone had managed to lose an Apple Watch at a theme park. It fell off when they're on a roller coaster, and by the time that they had gotten around to taking a look to see what happened, they already had like $10,000 worth of charges already on the device because someone could just take it and start using it. And it never occurred to them that maybe they should shut down that device right away rather than taking a look later. So, just make sure all your devices are able to remote wipe and be shut down and be turned off to avoid these kind of things. This can happen. It can happen to all of us. I know, even when we're not looking or not thinking about it. Okay. Device security. I want to point out, cyber crimes of 600%. That's just a terrible statistic, but it's telling you that this is a problem that is not going away. This is a problem that's going to be with us. And we trust our smartphones, and smartphone separation anxiety is a real thing. Just to mention the book that I just published, that was one of the things I researched, was that people do get a level of anxiety that is noticeable when they are separated from their smartphones, and our smartphones go everywhere with us. And because of this, again, this is another potential node of vulnerability. The question I ask you is, okay, I know many of us get our emails and can access systems through our phone, but are we using the same, like, are we using a virus protection? Are we having it monitored just like our laptop? You know, I as a project manager, that's a question to ask. is everything secure? And then also make sure, uh, is everything secure? You may access your work data, let's say through your personal computer at home. Again, is that secure? Is that up to date? Is that have the latest patches? Because anytime you have a node like that opening up to your systems, you're opening up the potential of something risky that where someone else can enter through. Um, and also, sometimes when we're on vacation or out in public places, lost devices happen. So making sure that they're secure and making sure we can control and delete them from a distance. I am sure that all of us, because I hear it in the news every now and again, some kind of prototype mobile device by someone, be it Apple or Google or someone else, gets lost, and somehow the public finds that it's found, and lost and found at some restaurant or something. This happened. These devices get lost, just like our phones can get lost. So making sure that you can recover or delete that information remotely is very, very important. On top of that, just from a device security when it comes to our personal devices, our mobile devices, consider this bit of data. There has been 813,000 apps that were removed from the Apple Store and Google Play in 2021. 813,000. So over 3/4 of a million apps have been removed. Now, of course, if they will tell you, oh, well, they didn't meet certain requirements or this and that, but some of me tells me, well, how many of those were malicious and how many of those were set up that they maybe were skimming data from users and maybe gathering information. So, even putting an app from a known location like the Apple Store or Google Play doesn't mean that it's safe. So it's something to think about when you are taking these apps or using these apps, because they can sometimes, manage to take information from you. Some of them are also notoriously hard to turn off. It's like, well, how do you turn off the auto pay once you start it? It's like, well, it becomes quite the ordeal. I can't remember which one I had. I had some program where you had to send a letter to somebody, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. But you do what you got to do to get out of these auto pay. So just keep this in mind that just because you're using an app from a known location, it does not mean that it's safe. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is training. I'm sure as a project manager, you've been involved with cyber security training and some kind of cyber awareness training. There's different ways that it's positioned. I know I've gone through it many times and many refreshers and just for different organizations. And these are some of the myths that people think, okay, training is boring. Sometimes it is. I'm not going to lie, but I've had some that were very interesting. That particularly when they talk about actual real cases and what happened. Some people believe they already know everything that they need to know, and I get that. If you've taken the same training course 3 times, well, that training course isn't going to teach you anything new, but maybe the answer there is to offer other training and different training. And as a project manager, making sure that training is out there. Also, it's repetitive. For example, we all know what phishing is, and oh, don't put your credentials. If you think that email's strange, or why is the prince sending me a request for a wire transfer of money because he's got this big inheritance and he needs me to send him money so he can get that money and he can share with me that money. So I'm not sure why that Nigerian prince is so popular or why he continues to ask for money. But we need to remember, okay, scam, don't do it. And then this one happened. I remember this reminded me of a case where I was at a organization and there was an email that came in. I'm trying to remember. I think it was the I love you virus that was running around many years ago. And I remember someone opening it because they looked at it and they, I don't know if this is right, but I'm very curious. And as they opened it, they thought, oh well, I've got virus protection on my computer, so it'll be fine. Well, no, virus protection actually is good against known threats, and as an emerging threat, it's not going to protect you. So you have to protect yourself, and you have to be careful. And I want to do mention this point because how many times do we click or download a file a day? And as a project manager, you were constantly being inundated with different files and different datas and different clicks, punching out to different websites, and you get it so many times. And you only need to do the wrong thing once to expose the entire network. When it comes to training, I can only encourage you to do it, require it, track it, and discuss it, because you got to make sure that people understand it's part of the culture, and then they got to do it because people are going to try not to do it. I know I hate it. I sometimes drag my feet on it, and I know the importance, and I always learn something or see something I haven't maybe seen before. Unfortunately, the organizations that I'm with mix it up a lot because, trust me, if I had to do the same one every time, it would really not help me. And then, again, you have to make sure you also make the training current for emerging threats, because just because we know what's working now with threats and these things, there'll be new ones out there. I remember seeing an emerging threat out there that, someone could send you a text and you don't even have to open the text, because if you had your phone set up for an automatic preview, it would preview the text, and that would allow it to access your phone and get into your phone. So there are these new and emerging threats that can occur. So being careful to that is also very important. In my opinion, make it part of the culture. This is an example of a cybersecurity company. I don't think this one would work for everybody, but because their reputation and their livelihood was based upon keeping other people safe, what they would do is that they would do periodic tests, and organizations are starting to do this a little bit more, where they'll go and test their employees to see if they can catch people not doing the right thing. And the people that went and clicked on something that turned out to be a could have been a virus but was planted and tried, they would end up putting a little dunce hat on them, and they'd have to wear that hat for the remainder of the day, so everyone would know that they were not particularly cyber safe. Now, sounds terribly embarrassing, but sometimes I get the culture there, because imagine if you had this cybersecurity company and half the company, just opened up randomly emails and got hacked into. Think of what that would do to their reputation in the marketplace if that got out. So sometimes this embarrassment, that was what they were doing in the culture. But I feel just making it part of the culture so people know and think about it and talk about it is generally sufficient. And then making sure that people are safe. So training, please do it. Whatever you do, in a project, short, long, have some training and make sure you educate people, because you never know what they know coming into it. You'd like to believe they know, but and remember, this is across the board, not just the employees, 1099 people that are working, stakeholders that have access to system. Anyone that can access your system really needs to be trained and needs to be educated on what they can do to be cyber safe. Okay. Planning, a business continuity plan. Have a plan. I know as a project manager, many of us have a business continuity plan within our organization. But is that business continuity plan taking into effect certain cybersecurity issues that could happen? Is there a plan? And then on top of that, is there a backup plan? Does your organization have a backup plan? And I'll give you an example. Okay, 3 years ago or so, how many organizations had a plan for a pandemic? I'm pretty sure that very few did, and many might have had a business continuity plan, but the pandemic required organizations suddenly to pivot from working in an office to everyone being remote, and coming with that comes like, okay, now you've got all these remote people accessing a system. How are you monitoring it? How are you keeping it safe? How are you keeping all those computers safe? Um, having a plan, and then making sure you have a plan that if somehow through everything you've done the training, you've done the security, your remote monitoring, everything. If you're hit and somehow someone gets in there and does manage to, let's say, a ransomware attack, and they do capture your data and hide it, what is your plan then? What are you going to do? What I would agree that probably most of us aren't willing to pay However, I will point out that many companies in the past had paid the ransom quietly in order to try to make it go away. I feel that this is a problem because the more that happens, the more that it emboldens these criminals because now they're saying, "Wow, we got a big chunk of money. Let's do that again." you know, and so as opposed to having a plan and trying to avoid it, um, very important. Again, and keep cybersecurity as an organizational priority. Don't kid yourself. It's a priority. It needs to be discussed. There needs to be a plan. Just like other aspects of your project, you need to make sure that it's understood and communicate that plan. Make sure that people know that there's a plan, there's a backup plan, and make sure that your clients are aware. So that way they have the peace of mind that if something happens, that the project just doesn't come to a grinding halt, and then there's nothing to be done. So again, make it part of the culture, make it something that people are going to want to understand and comply with. Okay, another thing that some organizations don't realize, and that there is insurance out there. And if you look at the little stat there, it's something that's in the thousands of dollars. Now, this is for smaller companies. Now, if you're medium sized, it'll be more. But if you think about it, if you're a mid-sized company and let's say the insurance is going to be 10,000, but you're going to be able to have protection and cover some of these losses or these disruptive costs, it's well worth it. Now keep in mind, insurance companies are savvy. If you go and say, well, wow, I want this insurance, the first thing they're going to ask you is about your cybersecurity plan, your business recovery plan, and what steps you're doing and what things you can prove to them that you're doing to keep your organization cyber safe. Because if you just go and say, well, hey, we don't even have passwords, well, I'm pretty sure they're going to be charging you more than a few $1,000 because if they recognize that you are a big risk, they're going to charge you accordingly. But keep in mind, if you are doing the right things, even as a small company, keeping things up to date, and doing the right thing as much as you can, the likelihood is that your premium is going to be fairly reasonable, and it's something to take a look at because I feel that you could pay more, you're probably not paying less. But it's well worth it if you feel that it's something that could help your organization. And then just so I was reading this statistic as well. I think it's about a third of the companies that were government contractors that were hit by a cybersecurity attack went out of business within, I think it was 12 to 18 months. So from the standpoint of, do you think you'll be able to weather the storm and make it? Probably not, is the reality. Now, some will, and some can bring in the resources and make it work. But if you're already not as profitable and you don't have this extra buffer or you don't have access to cash to do these things, it's going to be a problem. And the other problem you run into is that once you've been hit, the likelihood of being hit again is that much more. So once you've been hit, you really need to step it up when it comes to protecting your organization, the project, whatever. Because once someone's out there and that they know that you're a target, they're gonna again go to the path of least resistance, and they're gonna say, "Wow, these guys let me in once. Let me try some other known vulnerabilities and see if these guys have gotten it together yet." And if you haven't, well, then now suddenly you're again in a situation where it's problematic. They've hacked in, and now you go through the whole thing again, and trying to survive that becomes extremely problematic. So something to think about, even for a project, short duration, take a look at it as one of those potential mechanisms to help with those costs if something were to happen. Can be quite reasonable, and so it might be something to look at. Okay. And with that, we've come to the end.
Robert, we thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate, and I hope that everyone goes away thinking about what we discussed, and I look forward to my next presentation here.